most games blur together after a while. Same mechanics, similar stories, same safe ideas. But every now and then you stumble onto something that feels completely different and just kind of freshens up the things. The kind of game that makes you stop and go, why haven't I heard of this? So today I just want to discuss about those kind of games. Unique, niche, some even janky, underrated maybe, but definitely worth a shot. So let's ramble on about them. Return of the Obra Dinn. So here's the deal. You're an insurance investigator in the 1800s, and this big-ass ship, the Obra Dinn, drifts back into port with no one alive on board. Everyone's either missing or dead. Figure out who all these people were, how they died, and, if possible, why. That's it. No magic powers, no action scenes, just you, a notebook, a ship map, and this weird pocket watch that shows you the exact moment someone died. Sounds simple, but nah. This thing is a full-blown logic puzzle from hell. Each death scenes you unlock freezes a moment in time, like a 3D photo. People are mid-scream, falling, getting stabbed, shot, crushed, eaten by a kraken. Yeah, it gets real. You move through that frozen moment and study everything. Accents, uniforms, tattoos, positions, relationships, and slowly, piece by piece, you connect the dots. Like, okay, this guy was standing here and you called that guy brother, and that dude has a Russian accent, so maybe... There's no random guessing either. The game knows if you're just fumbling. It only locks in your answers when you get 3 of them exactly right, which pushes you to be damn sure before committing. And when those clicks happen, when you suddenly realize who someone is based on one tiny clue you missed before, it feels so good. Like, proper detective level satisfying. Visually, it looks like something out of a chunky old Mac screen, monochrome, pixelated, and honestly kind of ugly at first glance, but once you settle into it, that style works. It feels cold, isolated, fitting since you're basically walking through a floating tomb. It's definitely not for everyone. If you hate thinking or get bored without flashy stuff, skip it, but if you like piecing together a mystery with zero hand-holding, if you enjoy that aha moment when it all finally clicks, then this thing might honestly be one of the smartest games you'll ever play. No fluff, no BS, just brains and a boat full of secrets.
Here, let me help you. What madness is this?
Brutal Legend. So Brutal Legend came out in 2009. Like, this is one of those games where I feel like I have a responsibility to talk about it because I genuinely think it is one of the most misunderstood, most slept on, most unfairly forgotten games of its entire generation. And I think a big part of why it got slept on is because it was sold wrong. It was marketed wrong. People went in expecting one thing and got something else and bounced off of it. And that is a tragedy, because if you go into Brutal Legend knowing what it actually is and you are the right person for it, and you might be that person, you might absolutely be that person, this game is one of the most purely joyful, most creative, most lovingly crafted experiences you can have. It is a love letter, like a full, genuine, heartfelt love letter. And I'll explain what I mean by that. This is a game that is simultaneously an action game and an open world game and a real-time strategy game, and a comedy, and a rock opera. And I know that sounds like a mess. I know it sounds like someone just threw a bunch of genres in a blender, but in the hands of Tim Schafer, it somehow, miraculously, feels completely coherent. It feels like it could only ever have been exactly this, because every single piece of it comes from the same place. Every piece of it comes from a deep, genuine, almost overwhelming love of heavy metal. So let's get into it. You play as Eddie Riggs. Eddie Riggs is a roadie, like a heavy metal roadie. He's the best roadie in the world, actually, and he knows it, and he's kind of quietly miserable because the bands he works for now are all this terrible glam pop metal nonsense, and he is a man who truly believes in the power of real metal, old school metal, and he's just grinding away doing his job because it's all he knows. And through a sequence of events involving a stage collapse and a blood sacrifice to his belt buckle, look, just go with it, Eddie gets transported to this ancient world, this world that is literally built from heavy metal, like the landscape is made of the visual language of heavy metal album covers come to life. There are mountains that look like giant amplifiers, there are forests of giant guitar necks, there are rivers of fire, there are demons and warriors and creatures that look like they stepped directly off the artwork of a Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden record. And Eddie wakes up in the middle of it and goes, huh, and then he gets to work. The world itself, and this is something I think people don't fully appreciate about Brutal Legend, is one of the most creative, most meticulously designed open worlds in gaming. And it's not big in like a modern Ubisoft sense where it's big because they needed checkboxes. It's big because there is so much stuff to say about heavy metal and they needed the space to say it, because every single inch of this world is a reference. Every landmark, every enemy design, every piece of scenery is a nod to something. A band, an album cover, a lyric, a moment in metal history. And if you are a metal fan, if you have even a cursory knowledge of the genre, playing Brutal Legend is it's like walking through a museum that was built specifically for you. You round a corner and you see something and you go, oh, that's a reference to that album. Oh, that's based on that artwork. Oh, that enemy design is clearly inspired by that. And the density of that stuff is remarkable. And then there's the RTS element, and look, this is the thing. This is the thing that I think caught people off guard and divided opinion on this game, because about a third to a half of the game involves these stage battles, where you're essentially playing a real-time strategy game. You build a stage, the stage generates fans, which is your currency, you spend fans to summon different types of units, different soldier types, different vehicles, and you direct them in battle against an opposing army while also participating personally in the fight as Eddie, and the goal is to destroy the enemy stage. And I think the honest take on this is the RTS elements are not deep. Like, if you are a hardcore RTS player, if you live in StarCraft, this is not going to scratch that itch in the way you might want. The mechanics are relatively streamlined. This game deserved better than it got in 2009, it really did. But it's still here, it's still waiting, and if you've never played it, man, you are in for something. Alright, quick pause before we get into the main video. If you're thinking about playing Mech Arena, hold up and don't download the standard version just yet. I found out about the Aptoid version of the game, and using it basically lets you skip weeks of the early grind. If you install the game through the Aptoid link in my description, you immediately unlock a stacked starter account with a 5-star Brickhouse mech, Impulse, the Xaviera pilot, a 4-star Cryo Launcher 8, 500 A-coins, 100,000 credits. That is a massive head start. But if you want the absolute best value, especially if you ever make in-game purchases, there is one extra step you need to do. Install the Aptoid wallet alongside the game and add your payment method there. Once that is set up, just go to Rewards, hit Promo Code, and drop in my code MECH. Doing that guarantees you at least 10% cashback on your Mech Arena purchases on top of all those exclusive starter rewards. Don't start from zero the basic way. Grab the Aptoid link down below, set up your Aptoid wallet, use code MECH, and claim your free loot. Alright, back to the video. Banishers, Ghost of New Eden. Basically, you play as this dude Red, who's a ghost hunter, and his girlfriend Antia, who used to be a ghost hunter, but now she's a ghost herself. They go to this creepy place called New Eden because there's some really nasty ghost problem, but things go sideways, and Antia ends up becoming one of the ghosts they hunt. Talk about a messed up situation, right? So the game is all about these two trying to figure things out. You run around as Red, fighting ghosts and monsters with swords and guns, but Antia's a ghost, so she can do all this cool, spooky stuff in fights too. You can even switch between playing as Red and sometimes using Antia's ghost powers during battles. It's pretty neat. But the main thing is, everywhere you go in this creepy New Eden, there are ghosts haunting people. You gotta figure out what happened to them and then make a choice. Do you help them move on to the afterlife, banish them, or do you try to let their spirit stick around somehow, ascend them? And the choices you make really change the story and how things end up for Red and Taya and for the people living in New Eden. It's not always a clear good or bad choice, which is pretty cool. Since it's from the Life is Strange people, you know the story, and the characters are gonna be a big deal. Red and Antia's relationship is really at the center of it all, dealing with this crazy situation of one of them being a ghost. It's like a love story with ghost hunting mixed in, which is kind of a unique thing. Reasonace of Fate. Can you imagine you're walking into a store that sells video games, right? And you see this cover art that's just different. Everyone's wearing these fancy old-timey clothes, but they're holding these crazy looking guns, and the background is all these giant metal gears and pipes going up forever. That's kind of the vibe of this game. It's got this really unique style that you don't see every day. You're following these three characters: Vacheron, who's kind of the cool, experienced one, Zephyr, who's maybe a bit more rough around the edges, and Leanne, who's often the more thoughtful one. They're basically mercenaries, which means they take on jobs for money, but as they go around this giant tower world called Basil, they start to uncover some really weird stuff about how the whole world works and who's really in charge. The story can be a bit like a puzzle at times, where you're slowly putting the pieces together, but it's definitely got its own strange and interesting story to tell. Now the fighting in this game is where it gets really interesting and kind of unusual. It's turn-based, so you take your time to decide what to do, but it feels much more active than just picking attacks from a menu. But you move your characters around the battlefield in straight lines, and if you can connect the beginning and end of your movement with an attack, you do this special try attack that can really mess up the bad guy. It's like you're choreographing these gunfights. You also have to manage this energy thing called bezels, because if you run out, you can get into trouble. It's all about moving your guys into the right spots and timing your attacks just right. It can take a little while to click, but once it does, it's a really satisfying way to fight. Even getting around the world map is a bit different. It's like a big grid, and you have to use these special hexagon-shaped energy pieces to unlock new paths and areas to explore. It's another one of those unique touches that makes the game stand out. Vampire. This one's got a cool dark vibe going on. It throws you into London during the Spanish flu epidemic around 1918, and you play as Dr. Jonathan Reed. Now here's the twist, he's also just become a vampire. So you're this respected doctor trying to save lives during a terrible plague, but you've also got this uncontrollable thirst for blood. The game really leans into this duality. You're constantly torn between your Hippocratic oath as a doctor and your newfound predatory nature as a vampire. You'll be investigating the source of the flu, dealing with the shadowy secrets of London's underbelly, and trying to control your urges. So one of the central mechanics of Vampire is the feeding system. You can choose to prey on the citizens of London to grow stronger and unlock new vampiric abilities. Each district in the city has its own set of residents, each with their own lives, relationships, and secrets. If you decide to feed on someone, it'll impact that district, their absence will be felt, and it can have ripple effects on the overall stability and well-being of the area. Some characters might offer valuable information or services, so deciding whether to drain them for power or keep them alive for their usefulness creates some really tough moral choices. The combat in Vampire is a mix of melee attacks using makeshift weapons in your claws and supernatural vampire abilities like blood spears and shadow dashes. It's not the smoothest combat out there, and it can be a bit clunky at times, but it gets the job done. The challenge often comes from facing groups of enemies, including other vampires, vampire hunters, and infected humans. Pentiment? How do you pitch this to someone? Because on paper, it sounds like it could either be the most interesting thing you've ever heard, or you could immediately check out. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it, and also the challenge of it. But I'm here to tell you, if you give this game a real shot, if you sit down with it and you let it do its thing, Pentiment is genuinely one of the most remarkable, most singular experiences you can have in gaming right now. And I mean that. So let's set the stage. Pentiment is made by Obsidian Entertainment. Yes, that Obsidian. The Fallout New Vegas people, the Pillars of Eternity people, the Outer Worlds people. And I think what makes Pentiment so fascinating right out of the gate is that it is clearly a deeply personal passion project. Like, this is not a game made by committee. This is not a game where somebody in a boardroom looked at market trends and greenlit a concept. This is a game where the devs clearly had something he wanted to say, a world he wanted to build, a period of history he was genuinely obsessed with, and he just went and made it. And you can feel that in every single pixel of this thing. Every single word, every single frame. The game is set in 16th century Bavaria. We're talking 1518. We are right in the thick of the Protestant Reformation, right when Martin Luther is nailing things to doors and the whole religious and social fabric of Europe is starting to pull at the seams. And the setting is this small Bavarian town called Tassing and the Curacao Abbey sitting up on the hill above it. And you play as Andreas Mahler. Mahler literally means painter in German, who is this journeyman artist, this itinerant scholar who's been living and working in the Abbey scriptorium. He's been there for years at this point, illuminating manuscripts, working on this massive theological work that he's been tasked with. And he's just kind of embedded in this community. He knows the monks, he knows the townspeople, he's got relationships everywhere. He's caught between two worlds, the ecclesiastical world of the abbey and the peasant world of the town below. And he's a fascinating protagonist because he's not a hero in any traditional sense. He's just a person, a complicated, flawed, intellectually curious person stuck in the middle of something much bigger than himself. And what kicks off the plot is a murder. A nobleman is found dead in the abbey, and Andreas gets pulled into trying to figure out what happened. And I know, murder mystery, medieval setting, sounds like a familiar setup, but this game does something with that framework that is so much more layered and unexpected than you're ready for, because this isn't really just a murder mystery. That's almost like the entry point, the hook to get you into something that's actually about so much more. It's about faith and doubt, it's about class and power, it's about who gets to write history and whose stories get told and whose get buried. It's about what it means to live in a community and what your choices ripple out and do to the people around you over time. And I mean over time literally, because this game spans about 25 years across 3 acts, and you watch this town and these characters age and change and live and die, and that is unlike almost anything else in gaming. And also, man, the art style, like an actual medieval manuscript. The whole game is rendered in this style that evokes the look of 15th and 16th century woodcuts and hand-illustrated books. The characters are these beautifully stylized figures that look like they literally stepped off the pages of a historical text. The environments are these gorgeous flat illustrations that feel like woodblock prints. And the text, and this is a text-heavy game, there is a lot of reading, the text actually changes style depending on who's speaking. Like monks have this beautiful calligraphy script, peasants and common folk have a rougher, more informal hand, scholars have their own specific style, and it makes every single line of dialogue feel like it belongs to a specific person in a specific world. It is one of the most cohesive, most intentional art directions I have ever seen in a game. There is nothing that feels out of place, nothing that feels like a shortcut. It all feels completely considered. Now, gameplay. And look, I want to be upfront about this because I think some people bounce off Pentiment for this reason. This is not an action game. There's no combat, there are no skill checks in the traditional RPG sense where you're rolling dice and things can fail. This is a narrative game, a story game. You are walking around, you are talking to people, you are reading, you are making choices. That is the gameplay. And at the beginning of the game, you actually build out Andreas's background, what he studied at university, where he's been, what his expertise is, and that shapes what information he has access to, what he notices, what he can bring up in conversation. Like if you studied theology heavily, you might pick up on something a monk says that has a specific doctrinal implication. If you focused on law, you might notice something about a property dispute that other people would miss. And it doesn't change the core story, but it changes the texture of your playthrough. It changes what Andreas is bringing to the table. And I thought that was such a smart, elegant way to handle character building without it feeling like a traditional RPG system. The choices though, and this is the big thing, the choices in this game carry real weight, like genuine, no takebacks, this is now the history of this town weight. Characters die, people's lives are affected by the decisions you make, and crucially, you will never have all the information, you will never be totally sure. In the first act, you have to make an accusation. You've been investigating, you've been gathering clues, you've been piecing things together, and then you have to point a finger at someone. And I genuinely sat there for probably 5 minutes just staring at the screen, because I wasn't sure. I had a strong suspicion, I had reasons, but I wasn't certain. And the game is designed that way on purpose, because it's reflecting something true about history, about how often in history the wrong person got blamed, how often guilt and innocence were determined not by truth, but by circumstance and bias and power. The game is also pretty short by some standards. You're probably looking at somewhere between 12 and 15 hours, depending on how much you explore and how much you read. And I think some people might hear that and go, oh, okay, that's it. But honestly, I think that's the exact right length for what this game is. It doesn't pad anything out. Every hour feels purposeful. I'll say this, Pentiment is not for everyone, and I don't mean that as a knock. I mean it genuinely. If you need action, if you need mechanical complexity, if sitting and reading dialogue for stretches is something that takes you out of it, this game is probably not your thing, and that's okay. But if you are the type of person who loves history, who loves a beautifully written story, who appreciates craft and intentionality in game design, who wants to play something that feels genuinely different from literally everything else on your shelf, just go get this.
Getting
OxenFree.
to know somebody, Dinn.
Yeah, fun. Any
excuse to hit
You
one.
play as Alex, a teenage girl heading to an old military island with some friends for a night of partying. Sounds harmless, right? But then you tune into some strange radio frequencies and things start to get messed up. Time loops, ghost signals, creepy voices. It turns from a hangout into this full-on supernatural mind trip. What makes OxenFree really shine is how natural the dialogue feels. The way the characters talk sounds like actual teens, not forced or cheesy. They joke, argue, cut each other off. It's all super fluid and real. You're not just picking lines from a list either. You walk around and talk at the same time, so it flows like a real conversation. No stiff pauses, no weird waiting, just people talking while spooky stuff's happening in the background. The gameplay isn't about fighting or puzzles, it's about exploring, choosing what to say, and slowly uncovering this freaky hidden story behind the island. Your choices actually matter too. Relationships shift, people remember things differently, and you can get a bunch of different endings depending on how you handle stuff. It's subtle, but it hits emotionally, especially if you play through more than once.
To stations that don't exist.
Oh my god.
Chants of Cennnar. Chants of Cennnar is one of those rare puzzle games that feels like a journey into the heart of language and culture. It's a deeply atmospheric experience where the focus isn't just on solving puzzles, but on unraveling the mysteries of communication in a beautifully crafted, otherworldly setting. The game drops you into a towering labyrinthine city inspired by the myth of the Tower of Babel. Different factions inhabit the tower, each speaking their own language, and your goal is to bridge the divide by deciphering their scripts and learning to communicate. It's a fascinating concept, and the game executes it with elegance. At its core, Chants of Cennnar is about exploration and observation. You'll be piecing together languages by noticing patterns and symbols, gestures and contexts, almost like an amateur linguist. The game doesn't hold your hand, it trusts you to pay attention, experiment, and make connections. When you finally decode a new word or phrase, the sense of accomplishment is immense. The world itself is stunning. The art style is bold and minimalist, with clean lines and vibrant colors that make every area feel distinct and alive. Each part of the tower reflects the culture of the people living there, from their architecture to their clothing, and it all ties back to the overarching theme of diversity and connection. What's really impressive is how Chants of Cennnar uses its mechanics to immerse you in its themes. As you learn to communicate, you start to bridge gaps between factions, solving not just puzzles but conflicts. It's a subtle but powerful way of showing the importance of understanding and empathy. The soundtrack complements the experience perfectly. It's understated and atmospheric, enhancing the sense of wonder and discovery without ever overpowering the gameplay. But now, if there's a downside, it's that the game demands patience. Some puzzles can feel obtuse, and the lack of explicit guidance might frustrate players who prefer a more direct approach, but for those who enjoy taking their time and figuring things out organically, it's all part of the charm. Chants of Cennnar is more than just a puzzle game, it's an exploration of language, culture, and the barriers that divide us. It's thought-provoking, visually striking, and endlessly rewarding for players willing to dive deep into its intricate world. If you're looking for a game that challenges your mind while telling a quiet but meaningful story, this one's a must-play. Enslaved Odyssey to the West. This game is one of those hidden gems that just didn't get the attention it deserved. Enslaved Odyssey to the West comes from Ninja Theory, the same team behind Hellblade, and it's got this awesome mix of action, story, and just flat-out cool world design. You play as Monkey, this tough, athletic dude who gets stuck working with Trip, a tech-savvy girl who forces him to protect her by putting this headband on him that'll literally kill him if he doesn't help her. It sounds a bit harsh, right? But the way their relationship evolves is actually one of the best parts of the game. It starts out rocky, like they can't stand each other, but as you play, you see them start to trust and care for each other. The world they've built is so cool. It's set in a post-apocalyptic future, but instead of the usual gray and brown wasteland, everything is green, overgrown, and alive. It's like nature completely took over the ruins of the old world. You'll be climbing crumbling buildings covered in vines and exploring these bright, beautiful environments. It's such a refreshing take on the whole end of the world vibe. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty straightforward but fun. The platforming is smooth and looks awesome, even if it's a bit on rails. The combat is solid. You've got a staff for both melee and ranged attacks, and while it's not super complex, it's satisfying enough. It's not about reinventing the wheel, it's more about keeping you engaged while you soak in the story and the world. And speaking of the story, it's way better than you'd expect. Andy Serkis, the guy who played Gollum, does the motion capture and voice for Monkey, and his performance is great. You really feel the emotion in the characters, and the writing keeps you hooked. The music adds a lot too. It's subtle, but it fits perfectly with the tone of the game. If there's anything to complain about, it's that the gameplay can get a little repetitive, and the camera sometimes decides to do its own thing. But honestly, the story and characters more than make up for those small issues. The Council.
William, you dirty traitor.
This game feels like it was made for people who love digging into layered stories and making tough decisions. It's part narrative adventure, part RPG, and it throws you into a mystery that only gets weirder the deeper you go. You play as Louis de Richet, a member of a secretive organization called the Golden Order, who's been summoned to an isolated mansion to find his missing mother. But this isn't just any mansion, it's hosted by Lord Mortimer, a man with way too many secrets, and the guests are some of the most influential figures of the late 18th century, like Napoleon and George Washington. The setup feels like the start of an Agatha Christie novel, but then it starts spiraling into supernatural territory in the best way. What makes the Council stand out is how it handles conversations and choices. It's not just about picking dialogue options. You have skills to upgrade like manipulation, linguistics, and occultism, which open up entirely different paths and interactions. Let's say you're good at politics, you can steer the conversation to get what you want, but if you lack the skill, you might stumble and reveal something you didn't mean to. Every choice feels like it matters, and the game doesn't hold your hand if you mess up.
Excuse me, madam. I'm sure we've met before, but I don't remember.
The story leans hard into conspiracy and the occult, and it does so with zero hesitation. What starts as a search for Louis' mother becomes this sprawling tale of secret societies, ancient artifacts, and power struggles that go way beyond politics. It's weird, ambitious, and filled with moments where you're not quite sure who to trust or if you can even trust yourself. Visually, the game has this old-world elegance that fits its setting perfectly. The mansion is a character in itself, with its grand halls, hidden passages, and art dripping with symbolism. The character designs are distinctive, and while the animations can feel stiff at times, the visual style pulls you into its world. One of the coolest aspects is how it encourages replayability. Because of how skills work and the branching storylines, you can easily miss entire chunks of content on your first playthrough. It's not a game that just pretends your choices matter, they actually do, and they can lead to wildly different outcomes. The Council isn't afraid to take risks, and that's what makes it special. It's a game that keeps you thinking, second-guessing, and wondering what's going to happen next. If you're into intricate narratives with a dose of the supernatural, this one's absolutely worth playing. It's not perfect, but it's unique, and that's what makes it stick with you.
And secrecy are both pillars of the organizations for which we work.
You know, Louis, I've only just now realized that I've been drawn here.
The Sabatour. The Sabatour is a game that feels like it flew under the radar, but it's got so much going for it that it deserves a second look. Set in Nazi-occupied Paris during World War II, it puts you in the boots of Sean Devlin, an Irish mechanic turned resistance fighter with a grudge. I think of it as an open-world revenge story mixed with stealth, sabotage, and a bit of old-school charm. What immediately sets the Sabatour apart is its striking visual style. Early on, the game uses black and white visuals to represent areas under heavy Nazi control. Says you liberate parts of the city and inspire the locals to fight back, color gradually returns to the world, creating this really satisfying and symbolic contrast. It's more than just a gimmick, it gives a tangible sense of progress and hope as you dismantle the enemy's grip on Paris. Gameplay is all about choice. You can go in guns blazing, sneak around using disguises, or climb rooftops for a more parkour style approach. The open world design encourages experimentation, and whether you're blowing up watchtowers, sabotaging tanks, or just picking fights with Nazi patrols, it always feels like you're making a difference. Sean himself is a big part of the game's charm. He's a scrappy, no-nonsense character with a lot of personality, and his Irish wit adds some much-needed levity to the darker setting. The supporting cast, while not as fleshed out as Sean, includes a mix of resistance fighters and shady characters who help push the story forward. Paris in the Sabatour isn't just a backdrop, it's a playground. The city is packed with detail, from bustling streets to quiet countryside hideouts, and climbing to the top of landmarks like the Eiffel Tower for a bird's eye view never gets old. Add in a period-appropriate soundtrack with jazz and big band hits and the atmosphere feels spot on. If there's a downside, it's that the mechanics can feel a little dated. The shooting and stealth aren't as refined as other games in the genre, and the AI can be inconsistent, but the overall experience with its unique style and mix of gameplay options more than makes up for it. The Sabatour might not be perfect, but it's ambitious and packed with personality. It's a love letter to resistance stories with a unique visual twist and plenty of opportunities to cause chaos. If you're a fan of open world games and haven't tried this one yet, it's absolutely worth checking out. There's nothing quite like taking on the Nazis with dynamite and a pint of whiskey.
Under my knife. Not like this. There's nowhere you can run. I'll find you wherever you go.
So, in this game, there is no action, no combat. There's no exploration in any traditional sense. You are watching a story unfold, and you are making choices that shape that story. That is the whole thing. Basically, it's a really tight and interesting narrative game that will keep you hooked once you get past the slideshow look of the game, which, yeah, I get it. It looks really jarring, but hear me out. As Dusk Falls does not look like a conventional video game. It looks like, okay, imagine a graphic novel, like a really beautifully illustrated, painterly graphic novel, and then imagine those panels very subtly animated, not fully animated like a cartoon, not static like a comic book, but something in between. Like the illustrations breathe, characters blink, shift slightly, the camera moves slowly across a panel, and it creates this effect that is almost like flipping through a really cinematic graphic novel in real time. Now, about the story. So the game opens in 1998, Arizona, and we are following two families whose paths are about to collide in this catastrophic, life-altering way. One family is just an ordinary family, like genuinely ordinary. They're in the middle of a move, they're dealing with their own quiet tensions in their own baggage, and they stop for the night at this roadside motel in the middle of nowhere, just trying to get from one place to another, just trying to get through the day. And then there's this other family, these brothers, who have just come from something that went very, very wrong, and they end up at the same motel, and things escalate fast. And what starts as this desperate, volatile, completely out of control situation becomes a full-blown hostage crisis, and the people caught in the middle, the ordinary family, the other guests, everyone stuck in that motel, their lives are never the same after that night. Not one of them. And that one night, that is just the beginning. Because here's the thing that makes As Dusk Falls so special and so unlike most things in this genre. The game spans 30 years. Like, it is structured across 6 episodes and it covers decades of these people's lives. And what it is actually about, what it is really deeply about underneath the hostage drama and the tension and all of that, is aftermath. The choice system is also, okay, so As Dusk Falls handles choices in this really interesting way. You have these decision moments where you pick dialogue or actions, and the choices feel genuinely consequential in a way that I think a lot of games in this genre don't always deliver on. Like, choices matter here. People live and die based on what you decide. Relationships are formed or destroyed. Futures are opened or closed. And crucially, and this is something I really appreciated, the game does not always tell you what the right choice was. It doesn't give you a little indicator going, good job, correct decision, because there often isn't a correct decision. And the art style, look, I said I came around to it, and I did, but I want to be honest that it is a specific taste, and not everyone is going to immediately click with it. If the idea of a mostly static, illustrated visual novel style presentation is a deal breaker for you, then this game might be a tough sell, regardless of how good the story is. So go look up some footage first. Make sure the presentation is something you can get on board with, because the story absolutely deserves your attention, but the style is non-negotiable. It's fundamental to what this whole thing is.
Family means sacrifice.
Okay, I need a second here, because Kenshi is one of those games where I almost don't know where to begin, because everything I say about it is going to sound either completely insane or like I'm making it up, and I'm not making any of it up. Every single thing I'm about to tell you is real and actually in this game, and by the end of this, I think you're going to understand why Kenshi has this reputation, this incredibly specific, incredibly passionate, almost cult-like reputation among the people who have fallen into it, because falling into it is genuinely the right phrase. But like, I need to be really clear about that right out of the gate. When I say unlike anything else on this list, when I say unlike anything else in gaming, I mean it more literally for Kenshi than maybe any other game I could name, because the design philosophy behind Kenshi is so fundamentally different from how almost every other game is built, that it almost requires you to unlearn certain things before you can really appreciate what it's doing. Let me start with what the world is, because the world of Kenshi is one of the most genuinely original, most unsettling, most fascinating fascinating settings in all of gaming, and I think it deserves some real attention. Kenshi takes place on this planet, not named, just a planet, that is essentially a post-apocalypse. Like, whatever catastrophe happened here happened so long ago that there is no memory of it anymore. There is no civilization rebuilding. There is no hopeful resistance. There is no prophecy or chosen one or arc of history bending toward redemption. There is just this world, this blasted, hostile, deeply strange world of desert and dust and ruined ancient technology and warring factions and things that want to eat you. And the factions are all genuinely weird and genuinely unsettling in this very specific way. Like, there are these skeleton people, ancient robots from whatever civilization came before, just walking around trying to exist. There are these religious zealots who believe that eating any kind of meat is an abomination. There are slavers. There are cannibals, like actual organized cannibal societies with their own culture and their own economy based on eating people. There are these warrior monks. There are bandits and outlaws and bounty hunters, and none of these factions are simply good or evil. They all exist in this morally gray, deeply uncomfortable world that feels like it was built by someone who read a lot of weird science fiction and then just let it all ferment in their brain for a decade. And you are dropped into this world with absolutely nothing. And I mean absolutely nothing. No tutorial, no quest marker, no opening cutscene explaining what's happening or who you are or what you're supposed to do, no main quest, no story in any conventional sense. You start with a character, maybe one character, maybe a small squad, depending on what starting scenario you picked, with almost no money, almost no skills, almost no equipment, and the game just goes. Here you are, good luck. And this is okay. This is the thing. This is the thing that I think either immediately speaks to a certain type of person or immediately tells another type of person that this game is not for them. Because Kenshi has no goals it gives you. There is no objective. There is no end game the game is pointing you toward. The game is not trying to take you anywhere. You decide where you're going. You decide what you want. You decide who you want to be and what you want to build and what you want to do. And the world will absolutely, completely, mercilessly try to stop you from doing any of it. And when I say mercilessly, I want to be very specific about what I mean, because Kenshi is one of the hardest, most brutal, most genuinely punishing games I have ever played. Not in a Dark Souls kind of way, where the difficulty is designed and tuned, and there is always a path forward if you're skilled enough. No, Kenshi is brutal in this more chaotic, more realistic, more almost indifferent way. Like, the world is hard because it does not care about you at all. You are nobody. You are nothing. You are one tiny, insignificant person in a world that was here before you and will be here after you, and it operates according to its own logic completely regardless of whether that logic is convenient for you. Like, your first hours in Kenshi, you will get beaten up, probably a lot. Like, you might get attacked by bandits and get beaten half to death and left in the dirt, and then you have to drag yourself, literally. Your character will crawl on the ground if their legs are too damaged to walk, to safety, and then you have to let your wounds heal. And the healing in this game is real time. Like, you lie there and you heal, and while you're healing, maybe something else comes along and finds you, and maybe that's also bad, and maybe you get beaten up again, and you lie there again, and you think, okay, so that's how this works. The base building is also this whole enormous thing that opens up as you progress. You can find a location, and finding a good location is its own whole strategic consideration because different regions have different resources and different levels of danger, and you can build a base. And building a base in Kenshi is this deeply involved, deeply satisfying process of constructing buildings and setting up production chains and assigning your squad members to different jobs and managing food and water and power and defending against raids, because raids come. Now look, I have to be real with you because it would be dishonest not to be. Kenshi is rough. Like, technically, visually, in terms of user interface, it is rough. The graphics are not impressive by any modern standard. The animations can be janky. The UI is this dense, complicated, not particularly intuitive thing that takes actual time to learn. And none of it diminishes what this game is, because Kenshi is one of those rare cases where the rough edges are almost inseparable from the soul of the thing. Like, the jank and the weirdness and the occasional total absurdity are part of what makes it feel alive. This is the kind of game that grabs you by the guts, rips out your expectations, and reshapes them into razor-sharp claws dripping with conspiracy and carnage. This thing came crashing out in June 2009, same summer as Infamous, which created this beautiful bloodbath of comparison and competition. Cole versus Alex, Lightning versus Biomass, Hero versus, well, something decidedly not heroic. And that's the beautiful brutality of Prototype, right? This isn't your typical power fantasy where you're saving civilians and kissing babies and protecting the innocent. No, dude, you are the infection. You are the apocalypse in a hoodie. You're Alex Mercer. Well, sort of. And you wake up on a morgue slab mid-autopsy with no memory, no morals, and absolutely no chill. Because here's the twisted truth, the sinister secret at the center of this whole mess. Alex Mercer is dead, having died in Penn Station after he released the virus that killed a whole hell of a lot of people. The thing walking around in Alex's skin, wearing his memories like a mask, that's the Blacklight virus itself, sentient and searching, a walking weapon of mass destruction that thinks it's a man. And that existential horror, that identity crisis coded in crimson, that's what makes this game genuinely fascinating beneath all the brutal, bloody bombast. You're playing as something pretending to be someone, trying to piece together a past that isn't even yours, consuming conspirators and civilians alike just to understand what the hell happened. The consumption mechanic, man, that's the core, the cruel and creative heart of this whole experience. You grab someone, pull them close, and absorb them completely. Alex can consume others to regain health, absorbing their biomass entirely. Their body, their memories, their identity, all of it flows into you, fueling your powers, filling in the fractured fragments of the conspiracy. It's dark, it's disturbing, it's disgustingly satisfying, and you need to consume constantly, because biomass is your battery, your bread and butter, your biological bankroll. Every power you use, every wound you heal, every helicopter you hijack, it all costs biomass. So you're constantly hunting, constantly feeding, this parasitic predator prowling the panicked streets of Manhattan, transforming terrified soldiers and innocent bystanders into pure fuel. The powers themselves, dude, they're spectacular, savage, utterly over the top in the best way. You've got claws, these massive knife-like talons that can cleave through concrete and carve through tanks. The blade, a single sword-like appendage that's sharp enough to slice helicopters in half mid-flight. The whip fist, this telescoping tentacle of terror that you can use to grab enemies from distance, yank pilots out of choppers, or just sweep through crowds like a biological wrecking ball. Hammer fists transform your hands into these colossal, concrete-crushing clubs. Muscle mass amps up your already absurd strength to superhuman, super ridiculous levels where you're throwing tanks like toys. And my personal favorite, the shield and armor powers that let you plow through military blockades like butter, bullets bouncing off you while you're sprinting at speeds that would make the Flash flinch. The combat is chaotic, creative, completely unhinged. You're fighting the military, Blackwatch soldiers, marines, tanks, helicopters, all trying to contain you. And you're fighting the infected, zombified citizens, grotesque hunters that can match your moves, and these massive boss creatures that require real strategy to take down. And the beautiful thing is you can approach fights however you want. Because the movement in this game, the mobility, the madness of it, that's where Prototype really flies. You can sprint up any surface, buildings, bridges, billboards. You can leap across entire city blocks, cover crazy distances with a single charged jump. You can glide through the air, using momentum and madness to traverse Manhattan in ways that feel genuinely freeing and phenomenal. And the web of intrigue system is brilliant for this. You consume key targets, absorb their memories, and unlock these video clips, these narrative nodes that slowly, steadily reveal the bigger picture. You learn about Project Blacklight, about the real Alex Mercer, who was kind of a cold, callous bastard, honestly, about the biological warfare experiments, the cover-ups, the complicity, because Prototype isn't about being a hero or a villain, it's about being something in between, something undefined, something dangerous and desperate and deeply, darkly fascinating. It's a game that asks what you'd do with ultimate power, and answers immediately, probably a lot of awful things, and you'd enjoy every second. So yeah, Prototype. Born from the same studio that made the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction, built to be bigger, bloodier, more brutal and biomechanical. It's ugly, it's violent, it's morally murky and mechanically messy, but it's also bold, brilliant in its brutality, unforgettable in its unapologetic embrace of chaos and consumption. If you want a game that lets you be genuinely, gloriously destructive, if you appreciate dark stories about identity and evolution, if you're tired of games that pull their punches and want something that swings with savage strength, prototype deserves your time, your attention, your biomass. This thing started as a Skyrim mod, and it was so damn good, so densely written and deeply weird that it won a National Writers Guild Award. Think about that for a second. A modification of someone else's game beat out actual professional writers. That's the kind of lightning in the bottle brilliance we're dealing with here. So here's the setup, and it's simple but sinister, elegant but evil. You're trapped in an ancient Roman city, underground, untouched by time, but definitely touched by something darker. And this place operates under one rule, one law, one lethal limitation. If one person sins, everyone dies. The golden rule. Break it, and every single soul in the city turns to gold. Frozen. Finished. A city of statues, shimmering and silent. And when that happens, when someone steals or lies or kills or commits any crime at all, boom, time resets. You loop back to the beginning of the day, Groundhog Day style, but with way higher stakes and way better dialogue. You keep your knowledge, your items, your progression, but everyone else, they reset. Fresh slate, no memory of the massacre, which means you become this walking encyclopedia of secrets, this temporal detective, this chronological Columbo piecing together puzzles across multiple timelines. And dude, the way this game handles the time loop mechanic is masterful. It's not tedious, it's not repetitive, it's revelatory. Each loop peels back layers, exposes new paths, opens locked doors you couldn't reach before. You're not repeating the same day, you're remixing it, reconstructing it, rewriting it. The city itself is this claustrophobic masterpiece of marble and mystery. 23 characters, give or take, each one distinct, each one damaged in their own delicious way. You've got Galerius, the magistrate, trying to maintain order in a place where order is ordained by otherworldly oversight. You've got Sentius, the slippery slumlord who's clearly hiding something sinister beneath his smiles. Decius, the drunk, Opius, the healer, Aquisha, the priestess. Every single person has secrets stacked on secrets, lies layered over lies. And here's where the game gets gorgeous. The gameplay isn't about combat or quick reflexes or twitchy trigger fingers. It's about conversation. It's about asking the right questions, reading between the lines, catching contradictions, connecting dots that don't seem connected at first. This is a detective game disguised as a philosophical thriller, disguised as a historical adventure. It's Knives Out meets Memento meets a really good episode of The Twilight Zone, all wrapped in Roman robes and rendered in Unreal Engine. The dialogue system is deceptively deep. You can't just button mash through conversations and expect to succeed. Say the wrong thing, push too hard, reveal knowledge you shouldn't have yet, and characters will shut down, refuse to talk to you for that entire loop. And in a game where information is the only currency that matters, losing access to a character because you ran your mouth is genuinely punishing in this subtle, smart way.
Count on you to figure out who's about to break the golden rule.
Arrived here, and you already know.
The game does have some action sequences, which honestly feel a bit out of place, but also add this weird variety that keeps things fresh. There's this one quest called Behind Closed Doors, where you venture into a sealed palace full of zombie-like creatures, and suddenly you're in survival horror mode, shooting golden arrows at skeletal sentries in dark hallways. It's jarring, but also kind of brilliant, because it breaks up the philosophical pontificating with pure primal panic. Now, the game isn't perfect, no game is, no art is, right? The facial animations can look a bit stiff, a bit uncanny valley at times. The combat sections, when they appear, feel clunky and awkward because this engine, this design philosophy, wasn't built for action. Characters sometimes take too long to turn around when you talk to them, which is a minor annoyance that adds up over multiple loops. But here's the thing, those flaws fade fast when the story sinks its teeth into you, when you're 3 loops deep and you've just figured out how to save someone who seemed doomed, when you realize you can exploit the time loop in creative ways, like stealing money, which triggers the reset, but keeping the money in the next loop, essentially using the apocalypse as a free shopping spree, when you meet the god pulling the strings and realize the final boss battle is a philosophical debate, a war of words, wisdom weaponized against divinity.
Arrived here, and you already know everyone and exactly what's about to happen to them. Salve, friend.
So this game, the people who played it love it. They genuinely, deeply love it. And not enough people played it. And that is a problem I would very much like to help fix right now. And it is a sequel to The Darkness, which came out in 2007 and was developed by Starbreeze Studios. And the first game is also great, genuinely great, worth playing on its own terms. But The Darkness 2 is the one that I think really crystallized everything into something special. Something that just fully committed to what it was and executed it at a really high level. And what it was is one of the most viscerally satisfying, most most narratively interesting, most stylistically bold first-person shooters of its entire era. And I think it got completely buried under the noise of 2012, which was just an absolutely stacked year for games, and that is genuinely unfortunate. So here's the setup. You play as Jackie Estacado. Jackie is the Don of the Franchetti crime family. He is a mob boss, young, sharp, dangerous, trying to hold his organization together in a world that is constantly trying to tear it apart. And Jackie also happens to be the current wielder of the Darkness, this ancient primordial demonic entity that has been passed down through a bloodline for centuries. The Darkness lives inside Jackie. It gives him power, it gives him these incredible supernatural abilities, and it also talks to him, like, constantly. This sinister, seductive, deeply unsettling voice that whispers and goads and tempts. And the relationship between Jackie and the Darkness, this negotiation between his humanity and this thing inside him that is very much not human, is the core of everything this game is about thematically, and it is way more interesting than you might expect from what is ostensibly a game about a mob boss with demon arms. Now, the gameplay, because this is where the Darkness 2 does something that I genuinely think has not been replicated properly since, and it drives me a little crazy that nobody has really followed up on it, because the core mechanical concept of this game is quad wielding. And I know that word gets thrown around, but let me actually explain what that means in this context, because it is wild. So you have two hands, normal hands. You can hold guns in those, standard first-person shooter stuff. But the Darkness gives Jackie these two massive demonic tentacle arms, the Darkness arms, that extend out from his back on either side, and you control all four simultaneously. Left trigger fires your left gun, right trigger fires your right gun, left bumper controls the left Darkness arm, right bumper controls the right Darkness arm. And the Darkness arms can do a lot, like a whole lot. You can use them to grab enemies and throw them. You can use them to pick up environmental objects like a dumpster, a car door, a wooden pallet, and use them as shields while you're still shooting with both hands. You can use the Darkness arms to impale enemies on environmental hazards. You can grab a live enemy and use them as a human shield while dual-wielding pistols around them. You can grab an enemy and let the Darkness just... And this is brutal, I want to warn you, this game is extremely violent. Let the Darkness devour their heart, which restores your health. And what all of this creates is this combat system that is just relentlessly, joyously chaotic in a way that feels completely unique, because at any given moment you are making 4 simultaneous decisions with 4 simultaneous inputs. Left gun, left arm, right arm. And when it clicks, when you are in the middle of a firefight and you've got a guy pinned with the left arm and you're using him as a shield and shooting with your right hand and your left Darkness arm just grabbed another enemy out of the air, it feels insane. The art style is also something I need to talk about, because it is a massive part of why this game feels so distinct. The Darkness 2 uses a cel-shaded visual style that's directly inspired by the Top Cow comic books that the game is based on, and it is gorgeous. Like, it has this inky, high contrast, almost painted quality that makes everything look like a moving comic panel. Now look, I'm gonna be real with you. The Darkness 2 is short, like genuinely short. The main campaign is probably 6 to 8 hours, and in 2012 that was held against it pretty significantly. People felt like they weren't getting enough game for their money, and I understand that criticism on a pure value calculation level, but I'll say what I always say about games that are short and focused. 6 to 8 hours of this is better than 15 hours of something patterned and unfocused. What remains of Edith Finch? You play as Edith, the last living member of this super unlucky family, the Finches. She's come back to her old creaky house to figure out what the hell happened to everyone. And I don't mean like some basic what happened mystery. I mean, you literally explore the lives and deaths of every family member through these short, creative little story segments. Each one feels like its own mini game with its own rules and art style and tone. Like, one moment you're playing as a kid pretending to be a monster, and the next you're slicing fish while your mind drifts into a full-on fantasy world. It's wild how different each section feels, but somehow it all fits together perfectly. The real magic here is how it uses gameplay to tell the story, not just with dialogue or text, but with how you play. Like, there's this one level where a character is dealing with mental illness, and the way the controls split between a dull job and a daydream slowly taking over, it's straight up genius. You don't just hear what they're going through, you feel it.
And G1.
The house itself is a huge part of the vibe too. It's like this big, strange, overstuffed museum of memories. Every room is sealed off like a shrine, frozen in time, and when you finally get into each one, it tells you so much about the person who lived there without saying a word. Their hobbies, their fears, how they died. It's sad, but also kind of cozy, like you're walking through a family photo album that's falling apart but still full of love. And yeah, this game's sad. Let's not sugarcoat it. Almost every story ends with someone dying, but somehow it never feels cheap or edgy. It's just honest. Some of the deaths are peaceful, some are weird, some are just plain tragic, but they all feel human. And the way Edith processes it all, how she keeps searching for meaning even when it feels hopeless, it's beautiful.
This is where your story begins.